Thank you for taking the time to watch this video. I hope you watch it all the way through. There's a lot of good information, and I hope you enjoy it. Leslie Batson and I have become good friends and collaborators amongst a larger group that allows us to be a holistic or a full service agency where we can recommend CPAs, we can recommend long-term care providers, we can disability insurance, alternative investments, the way to look at investments. And so we are working with a team of people, and I hope you enjoy the video. And if you have any questions, please feel free to reach out to me as soon as you find time. All right, enjoy the video. Until next time.
Sure. Well, thanks again for inviting me to be on this and share with your community. So where do I start? I would say back in 2017, I was actually interested in finding a financial advisor. I was thinking like, okay, I really need to get my money together. I had a few years before that gotten divorced, but I was like, okay, you're kind of starting over. It's no longer two incomes and all that. And so, you're just kind of resetting. So I thought, let me just find a financial advisor, someone who can help me, just give me a roadmap. And so I did. I went and tried to seek one out. I interviewed a few of them, and ultimately I decided that that was definitely not for me. Pretty much what I found is that they weren't really telling me anything different than from what I was reading online. So I just didn't see the value in their service, in the different things that they were offering to me. Plus, I really didn't want all of my money in the market. And that's like the common thread that anytime I talk to any type of financial professional, they were just trying to put all my money in the market, even though I was telling them I don't want all my money in the market. So I just decided, well, I'm just going to take control of my own finances. And I had done a little bit of real estate investing when I used to live in Chicago. And so I decided I'm going to just get started doing some more real estate investing. And that's going to just start to supplement my income. Eventually that income will catch up, and then it will replace my my active income, so I could stop working. At that time I was doing IT consulting, and I was really getting burnt out, so I really wanted to do something different and make sure that my money was growing, but also that I had some level of control over it. So at that time I was listening to different podcasts and joined a few different groups to get more educated on real estate investing. And this one particular podcast I was listening to had a guest on there, and he was talking about this concept of infinite banking. And I thought, I've never heard this before. I had been looking online, trying to learn about how to grow my money. I've talked to some, licensed financial advisors, and no one had ever mentioned any of this. And this made it, although it was very different, I had never heard it before, it was making sense to me, right? Very different from all the other things that everyone else was saying. And so I just thought I need to understand this some more. And so that guest, he had his own podcast, and so I went and dove in and just started basically listening to every episode that he had out there, very much focused on infinite banking and understanding all these different benefits and all these different things you can do with whole life insurance. And I thought, wow, okay, this is the great, supplement. I think of the whole life insurance and infinite banking and the real estate investing is sort of like that dynamic duo, right? And so that's kind of where I started. But I really started to also think like, okay, if I've never heard of this and none of my friends or anyone in my circles ever told me this, more people need to know about this. And so I, again, just so I should back up and say, I went and listened to all his episodes. I reached out to him. I got a policy. I was just like, I was just very fascinated by it. I asked him all kinds of questions. And eventually, not only did I get my policy from him, but he had kind of, directed me to how I could get licensed so that I could also share this with other people. And so I did. I got my license and I started sharing this with other people. And so I've really been doing that for a few years now. And in April 2020, when my last contract ended in the consulting world that I was in for the last 20 years, that contract ended. And so I've been doing my business now full time in this space, helping people to implement infinite banking and other strategies so that they can, have control and grow and, grow their money. So that's sort of how I got down this path into
Awesome.
becoming an infinite banking authorized practitioner.
Yeah. Yeah, it's always interesting to me, the different ways that people, I call it stumbling on this.
Yeah.
You're searching, and I think that's probably one of the first traits a lot of times that people that are searchers,
Yeah.
always looking, always learning. So
Yes,
yeah, and that was,
absolutely. Hmm.
yeah. So so because you were in IT, and this is kind of a very different industry, do you have any thoughts about that, the skills that you learned in IT and how they transfer to this
Yeah,
industry?
absolutely. Yeah, because, so, Ray, I tell people all the time, I worked 20 years in IT and I never wrote a line of code, right? I was not an engineer. I was not a developer. And sometimes people don't realize this, but there's a lot of roles in the technology world where you're not writing code. So especially the first, I would say 12 years of my career, I was in a role in some companies might call it a business analyst or process analyst, process manager, or whatever. They would all have all these different titles.
Yeah.
But basically, in a nutshell, what my job was to, I worked, with like large Fortune 500 companies, all my clients were and all that. So my job was to, I would get hired by one group and be told to go talk to another group, another department, or some other part of the company, find out, how they're doing something and help them come up with a better way to do it. I mean, in a really nutshell, that's what I was tasked to do. And
Yeah.
usually it was by helping them implement some type of, technological improvement, whether it was software or, something that we would put into place to help make their processes more efficient, more secure, less manual, or whatever the situation was. So it was really, it's in my nature now. It's been, ingrained in me to go in and be very analytical. And that's what I do. So I look at things, I analyze, and I come up with recommendations. And so I've really just carried that through with what I'm doing, with my clients here. So they may come to me because they've learned about infinite banking or something else that maybe they've heard me talk about. But when we have our first, discovery call, I really want to understand more about them, right? Just what's important to them, who are they? Like, how's their family made up? Are they a business owner? What does their business look like? I want to understand these things about them because all those things feed into the recommendations that you would make. And then they would fill out a financial questionnaire so I can get, the details about their financial situation. And so based on the conversations and based on the information they provide in their financial questionnaire, I can do the analysis and then make the recommendations that make sense to them, right? And so, yeah, it's a complete direct, I've been able to, completely leverage those skills. And of course, I did a lot of like presentations and, presentations to executives telling them what they're doing wrong and those kinds of things. So, it's very easy for me to kind of put together a few slides and explain, a concept to people, that type of thing. So that comes a little bit natural for me. So yeah, so even though obviously, it's not necessarily a technological solution that we're putting in place for people, it's a financial one. Definitely, I've been able to transfer those skills from that career into this and helping people.
Yeah, it's kind of like for me, it's all the skills of running my own business for many years and building things,
Yeah.
with my hands, that I had to learn how to put things together that made everything work like a Swiss watch, so to speak.
Yeah,
So
absolutely.
it's the same, same kind of idea. That's great.
Yeah.
I kind of had that programming idea, coding idea in my head too.
Yes, I know. Most people do.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Yeah.
nope.
So it almost sounds a little bit like lean management control, project controls. It almost sounds
Yeah.
like that a little bit. But
Yeah, we definitely, yes, especially when I was doing more project management and things like that. But yeah, absolutely. I mean, we certainly would have like the sort of MVP, minimal viable product focus where, and that kind of evolved over time. But yeah, definitely, you can gather, you can keep gathering as much information as possible and then wait till you have it all and then try to wait till you can design the most perfect thing. Or you can start working with the information you have, start putting some things out there, see if they work. And if they don't work, you can tweak them, as you go, but at least you're, getting things in motion.
Yeah.
And I think, again, that definitely leans to a lot of, how I may work with some of my clients.
Yeah. So I'm looking at a list of thoughts that I had prior to us talking, and so tell me about what I would consider, I've heard you use the phrase, I'm all about protection and control. And can you put that in a nice little jar for us and say, this is it?
Yeah, of course. Yes. I kind of refer to myself a little bit as a control freak and in the best way, of course. And really to like what you just alluded to is really, I want to have control, over my money, right? It's just so many different places we get sort of talked into or convinced into putting our money. And it's like, we're told a little bit enough for us to want to put our money there, but then we're not told kind of the whole story as to how that affects our money when we put our money in a certain place. And I just like to have my money in places where I can control it as much as possible, right? And so with that, you want to be able to protect the money that you have as well. So whatever money is coming in, you want to keep as much of it as possible, and you want to be able to protect it. And so a lot of the strategies that I, use with my clients has to do a lot with, okay, when you have money coming in, where do we put it and how do we protect it? And not just looking like today, like not just today, not just this year, and not even just 20 years from now, but, how do we look across a few decades and even maybe, 100 years? So across multiple generations, how do we keep and, keep as much money into our family's household as possible? And so a lot of those strategies, as you know, Ray, can have a foundation of whole life insurance. Because with a tool as flexible as whole life insurance, it can serve as that, that place where you can put your capital reserves, right? And we all understand the importance of having savings, right? Shouldn't necessarily have all of our money in investments. Although investing is important to expand your reserves, but you need to first build your reserves. And one safe place that you can put your reserves is in a whole life insurance policy. And so you can control it there. It's liquid there. It's private there, right? You have very easy access to it. But it also comes along with the benefits of protection. So whether that is, in the event if you were, to have some type of illness or like a chronic illness, or even if you get diagnosed with a terminal illness in your lifetime, you're able to access some of those funds, against the death benefit to use to take care of those medical expenses or other things that would come into your, other expenses that would arise, that if you didn't have access to be able to borrow against or to tap into the death benefit of your life insurance policy, it would deplete your other assets, right? If your savings was sitting in a bank or somewhere else, you'd have to deplete those assets, or you'd have to cash out some investment, something like that. And so in one way, it's protecting your reserves in that way. In the second way, obviously, if, not if, but when we pass away, because that is a guaranteed event. But when we do pass away, we are able to, transfer that wealth to our loved ones without any type of income tax interference. And when we think about throughout our lifetime, all the different ways that, our money has been taken from us, whether it's, just if you pick taxes alone, right? Just, not just income taxes, but think of your property taxes you pay on your house every year. Think about when you stay at a hotel, the resort taxes that you pay on those bills. Think of your cell phone bill, all these different taxes that get taken away from us throughout our lifetime. Here's one way to not only replenish and restore all those little taxes that you've had to pay along the journey, but also to just be able to restore, liquid cash that your family can control, without them having to take a tax hit and without them having to take the substantial, fee hit along the way. So it's definitely really, I think, an important tool, really a foundational tool to anyone's, overall financial portfolio. It doesn't matter. I always tell people, it doesn't matter if you make $100,000 a year, $100,000 a month, or $100,000 a day, right? You should always have a solid foundation of savings and reserves so that, you're not having to dip into investments or sell those off or, do other things. And ultimately, if you have your reserves, that's what's going to allow you to be able to take advantage of new opportunities, right? New investments. Or like I mentioned, if something, unexpected on the negative side happens, you have money to be able to take care of that. But it doesn't disrupt what you're trying to do on the investment side or in other, different parts of your overall portfolio. So I think that it's just really important to have access to tools where you can have control and liquidity and protection.
All in one place.
All in one.
Yeah, all in
Yeah.
one, which is, yeah. When I first discovered this whole concept, you hear this all the time. People will say, how come I haven't heard of this before?
Yeah.
How come nobody's ever told me? Well,
Yeah.
it's just one of those things people don't tend to talk about all that much.
Yeah. Well, I think we're all, and even like if I go back to the financial advisors that I was talking to, right? I can't sit here and say that they didn't know anything about life insurance. I'm sure they did, but they didn't talk to me about it. Right.
Right.
And it could be because, I was not married. I don't have kids. So in their minds and in their training, to be quite honest, they're kind of just taught, well, life insurance is something that you offer to people so that they have something in place for when they die. And there's some money, for their loved ones, like for their wife or like their spouse or their kids.
Yeah.
But I've never had anyone, until I heard that podcast, I never had anyone tell me about the living benefits of life insurance. I never knew that there was a type of life insurance that you could build up savings, like have this cash value built up inside of it, and then tap into that savings. I never knew that there was a concept of accessing benefits before I died. No financial advisor ever explained that to me. I've never really read that online, right? And that's just because so much of what is put out there, whether it's, the financial news cable channels or, your HR department when you get a new job, the benefits that they send you, the blogs that you're reading, the, sign on the side of the bus. I mean, wherever we see messages related to finances, it is something related to putting money in the market. It's something related to investing. You don't hardly see any sign that says save first, then invest. Like you never see that, right?
Yeah,
because they don't
right.
make any money off of it, right? Wall Street doesn't make money off of that. The IRS, I mean, they do, in the long run, make money off of it. But the people who are spending the big bucks to advertise and market their financial products and financial services are the companies who do business with Wall Street. And so that's who dominates, the information that gets put into our in front of our eyes and into our ears, right?
Yes.
So I hope, and I believe they understand the importance of life insurance, but I don't think they understand all the different features of it. And therefore they don't talk about it, right? They talk about what they're more incentivized to talk about and what they understand more.
Right.
So it's really important for people to find, a licensed agent, not just someone who's licensed, but someone who actually, understands life insurance and is a specialist in it. And then they can help guide you in how it should work with your overall financial portfolio.
Yeah. To find somebody that knows about whole life participating life insurance with a mutual insurance company.
Yes.
Because there are terminologies, everything.
Yes, true.
The meaning of words.
Absolutely.
And so when we use that word, just the generic word, whole life.
Yeah.
There's other things in that category that we don't necessarily subscribe to. But there is a whole life dividend paying life insurance product with a mutual life insurance that is specific for what you and I are doing.
Correct. Yes.
Fair enough to say?
That's fair enough to say. And also to be clear, if their goal which is what most of our clients are, is with infinite banking, where they're wanting to build up cash reserves and take advantage of it, yes, then your policy, your whole life insurance policy can be designed a certain way. But then there are also other people who that is not necessarily their goal, or that's just an additional goal, right? One of their other goals is just making sure they have enough protection in place for their estate. And so they may get a whole life insurance policy designed in a way where maybe there aren't necessarily PUAs, right? It's really because the death benefit is their focus. But then they also might have term life insurance. And I think it's also important to mention that, because if someone really wants to get the full amount of life insurance that they're entitled to, they may not be able to afford the premiums right away of what that would be to have that all in whole life insurance. They may have a blend of convertible term life insurance that they can convert over time into whole life, in addition to the whole life. So for some of my clients, and for a lot of my clients, they will have some combination of whole life and term. And we work to try to get them to, be able to convert that term into whole life so that they know they're going to have this guaranteed death benefit, not just at the end, but again, being able to build up, more and more cash value throughout their lifetime. So.
Excellent. Yeah.
Yeah.
Perfect. Well, I had a question here. The three biggest eye openers that you had when you first discovered this, or you could answer the three things that new people of your clients, let's say your clients, three things that they seem to gravitate or really grab onto and say wow to.
Yeah. Well, I would say the first, just like for me and my clients, I would say was just the fact that there is this, cash value or savings component inside of life insurance, right? I think that's probably one of the more surprising things that people say to me, like, I didn't know that. And it's because most people are familiar with term life insurance, right? So they just know that you get this insurance and there's really not a benefit until you pass away. And so when you explain the concept that you actually can build up the savings inside of this policy, and not only, it's not just that you can build it up inside of the policy, but when you look at a comparable vehicle, like a, savings account at the bank, or like a CD or money market account, something like that, which is pretty comparable as far as it being a savings vehicle, you can see that you can earn so much more inside of a policy instead of it just sitting in the bank earning basically nothing, even though rates are starting to go up right now. But it's always going to typically, from my research, the what you're earning inside of your policy tends to always be greater than what you would have earned in the bank, in a savings account. So number one, that's the benefit that most people, they like the fact that they have this other place that they can put their money and it's private. So that's probably the first thing. The second thing I would say are the living benefits. So I touched on a couple of them, like if you were to be diagnosed with a chronic illness or terminal illness, you could tap into the death benefit to pay for, extended care or other things like that. But also if you were to, so I guess similar with if you were to get, if you were to have an illness, a qualifying illness, there's a rider called a waiver of premium rider. And I help them understand the benefit of that, because what that is again, if you were to get sick, like let's just say you're, 45 years old and you end up getting cancer. And so maybe you're going to need, several months, maybe it's going to take you a year to go through treatment and get back on your feet and be able to get back to work, working full time, making money. Well, in that year, if you have the waiver of premium rider on your policy, you can basically, the insurance company will take over, or they will waive your requirement to make your premium payments. So you don't have to worry about your policy lapsing right at a time when you're not working. Now, hopefully you have like maybe disability insurance or some other type of income protection in place. But if you don't, you're not having to, again, just spend all of your savings because you have to deal with this medical condition. They will waive your premium payment. So at least your policy will stay in place for that period of time while you're, getting better, hopefully getting better. And when I explain that to them, I say, has anyone ever offered to make your 401k contributions when you have to be off work because you're sick? And most people are like, no, right? There's really no other
Yeah.
vehicle that I'm aware of where someone will, take over making your premium payments or take over making your payments, so that your portfolio can continue growing, right?
Right.
So I think that living benefit is another one that people really like. And I think ultimately the third one I would say is the fact that that death benefit goes to their loved ones income tax free. Um,
Right.
and so, again, if you compare it to something like a 401k or an IRA, those funds now have to be your beneficiaries. Once they inherit them, they only have 10 years to be able to take that money out, right? If it's pre-tax dollars, they only have 10 years to be able to access that money. So whether they take it all out in that first year or in that 10th year or evenly, through that time, that is income that they have to take that gets added onto their own income. So now it's probably pushing them up, it's likely pushing them up into higher tax brackets and having them pay, more taxes on those monies. And I really don't think that, most of us, when we leave gifts to our family, we're hoping that they get to keep as much of it as possible. And with life insurance, a death benefit, it does allow them to do that. And I will say, Ray, that some people say to me, well, if they're in my position, like they're not married, they don't have kids, and they say, well, I still don't understand why I would need it, right? So I haven't even touched on the ability to access the cash. Probably that's number one. But being the ability to access the cash, to be able to access the cash value while you're alive, leverage it for, again, whether it's investments or expanding your business or paying for medical bills, whatever, your kids' college, whatever you want to be able to tap into that money for, you're able to tap into it, leverage it. You pay it back over time and reuse those dollars. You get to recycle those dollars instead of it just kind of going out the door. And so for someone who is, not married and not have kids and trying to understand why would I have life insurance, it's one of the best vehicles for you to have, again, in your overall financial portfolio, because you can tap into those funds to use, whether it's, and if you even just think of it in your retirement years, right? If you do have money in a brokerage account or 401k or something like that, that's in the market, and the market is low in a particular year, do you really want to take money out of that, in your retirement? It'd be great to have another place that you could pull dollars out so that those, those markets can recover, right? So you have all the ability to be able to access the money throughout your lifetime. And then when you do pass away, maybe you have nieces, nephews, whoever you want, siblings that you want to leave your money to, but you can also leave it to causes that you're really passionate about, right? So it doesn't have to be that you're married with a child that you need to have life insurance. Really, everybody can benefit from having whole life insurance specifically, because of all the ways that you can access and just really benefit from it while you're alive, as well as when you pass away.
Right. Which, as you pointed out before, is a guaranteed event.
And it's like, exactly, you are going to die, right? I mean, we can extend that, right? And we can see with medical advances that people are living longer, but it might also mean that in those later years that they might need some extended care, they might need some long-term care, and they're able to tap into their life insurance policy to be able to pay for some of that, right?
Yeah,
so
some of the care, yeah,
to pay for some of that care.
Before maybe we should wrap this up here, but I wanted to ask, is there anything, and thank you for all of that. That was great. Is there anything else that you would like to add to this? Yourself?
Final thought?
Final thoughts? Yeah.
Well, I would just say that, sometimes people will, hear me sharing about the different, all the great benefits of life insurance, and they're like, oh, I don't know if I would qualify, right? They're concerned, maybe, they're, too old, or they have a health condition or something like that. They're concerned. And I always just say, let's have a conversation. Let's discuss what your situation is. And let's be realistic about, if you do have some type, some situations that might cause your cost of insurance to be a little bit higher, how realistic or how affordable, let's just say, that's a better word, how affordable will the premiums be? What can we put in place for you? And then secondly, some people are much more harsher on themselves than the insurance company is. And I say, you won't know until you put in an application, right? So the application doesn't commit you to anything. You're not bound to anything. It just helps us understand, okay, how much is the insurance company willing to, offer you? And then we can design, once we know that amount, then we can, finalize a policy design that works best for you. And the third thing I'd say related to that is, if in fact you are not eligible because of maybe your health condition or something like that, you can, consider, getting insurance on a loved one. So someone who you have an insurable interest. It could be a spouse or a child or a parent. It could be, if you're a business owner, potentially, some of your key employees or higher level executives. There are ways that you can be able to still take advantage of some of the strategies using whole life insurance policies, even if you yourself are not insurable. Right. So you just don't want, you just want to make sure you're talking to someone. Talk to Ray, talk to someone who can really help you understand how it works. Don't just make assumptions about yourself that you won't be able to get it.
Right.
Because I've had that happen a couple of times. I just say, hey, like, I'm not going to ever push you. We always do everything in your own time. But let's just put in an application and just see what you can actually get. And 9 times out of 10 with those people, they can still get a policy. They're just like, oh, I didn't realize. I thought, whatever. I thought this would, prevent me from getting it. And it's like, well, okay, but your doctor's showing that you're, this is being managed with your medication. And so it's not a problem. Right. And they're like, oh, okay, I didn't realize. So just don't make assumptions about your own health and qualifications. Let us help you with that.
Yes. Talk to somebody that knows
talk to someone who knows
it really works. Yeah,
exactly.
One of the reasons I wanted to talk to you is one is I enjoy talking to you, but I also wanted to just walk the walk and talk the talk. In my last campaign that I sent out last week, I talked about collaboration. And that's what you and I do, not just you and I, but we have a whole other team around us that we're all helping one another. And so we're working with people that have been in the business for 40 years and people that have been in the business for 2 years.
Yeah.
And it's such a supportive community. It's just wonderful. And so I just wanted to actually show that there is really somebody out there that that I'm collaborating with. So
absolutely. And I think it's good that you bring that up, Ray, because, I hate to keep harping back to my experience with the financial advisors, but I do think that, typical financial advisors, or even people on the outside, right? Like as a potential client looking in to seek a financial advisor, they may see that it's kind of competitive, right? It can be a little bit cutthroat, I would even say, how some people can be in this industry. And I feel like you and I have been very fortunate to find a community where we don't need to compete. I mean, like literally there are millions of people out here. We can't all serve everybody. We should be helping as many people understand the importance of insurance as possible and collaborating like you and I have, but collaborating so that they can get it put in place, because unfortunately people just don't know, it's like up until 1978, people don't realize that a 401k didn't exist before then. It didn't exist as a retirement plan. Like that is a new thing that, like, if you look at the overall even history of this country, that is very new. That is like less than 50 years old, right? But prior to that, most families had some form of whole life insurance in place because that was their key savings vehicle. And it was their, ability to have not just like, expenses to pay for a funeral, but to like pass on wealth.
Right.
And that's just gotten so lost in, again, the marketing and with the spring of cable news channels and all these different things where we're pumped full of information about, like I said, 401ks and all these different things, but the information about just the traditional way that people were relying on making sure that they had money in the future was with a whole life insurance policy. So I love that we're in a community where we collaborate and we share and we refer and all of that type of stuff.
Yeah. So we do, I'll use the word holistic, meaning we want to be able to help a client in their full financial world.
Exactly.
Not that we're going to do it all, we're not the
Right, but we
expert in
can
all of
certainly
it,
help.
but we
Yeah,
know and we are connected to people that are. So we're able
exactly.
to help our clients in any way that they deem necessary. And if we see something, we can suggest things.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Yeah, insurance in this form actually goes back at least a couple hundred years.
Oh,
And
even before the US existed, right? It was
yes,
happening over in, England. I think like
yes,
in the 1600s or something. It
hundreds.
was started back then.
Yes,
So, I mean, it's the concept of people pooling their funds together to be able to support others, which is, essentially what life insurance is, whole life insurance is. That concept has been around for centuries.
yes.
And we understand it today, and it's been structured as whole life insurance, but there's a reason it's been around, and there's a reason it will stay, because
It will
it's
stay,
the
yeah.
most secure. It's a guaranteed, it's a product full of guarantees, and can provide that security blanket, and that control and that liquidity that is so important, not just while you're alive, but when you pass away, for those next generations.
Right. Yes.
Mhm.
Wonderful.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's about it for today. And if people want to get in touch with you, you can see up there on your wall, Rebel Rock Wealth.
Yes.
Um,
Yeah. You can go to
yeah.
rebelrockwealth.com. If you have any questions, you can schedule time with me there. Yeah, I'd be happy to help.
Yeah. Great. All right. Well, Leslie, I think that's a wrap.
All right, Ray. It was great chatting with you as always.
Yes.